give that guy an extension because next year it gives you that ability to kind of clean house and bring in your own guys. So it's a tough question. But my gut right now tells me that Bruce wouldn't be fired. But I think at this point, him getting an extension is at least, to start off with as a first move is unheard of. I will be interested to see what happens with the coaching staff if they stay on. I mean, there's no doubt that a couple of those people aligned themselves with Paul Fenton, and it created some schisms last year. And, I do think that those people, have to be a little concerned. I mean, and then one of them, obviously, is Dean Evison. I think he's a great guy and a great coach, but everything is going to be looking at, everybody looks at him as kind of Paul Fenton's handpicked guy to be a successor of Bruce Boudreau.
Right. Let's get some more Twitter questions in before we wrap up. I want one more commercial break here. I want to thank Bite Squad, bitesquad.com. Use the Bite Squad code TALKNORTH, one word, to get your first delivery fee waived, but keep using it after that. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, anywhere you are, anytime you want. Great restaurant quality food delivered right to you. You can join their membership program, $5.99 a month, free deliveries all month within a 4-mile radius. Also want to thank Tin Shed again. If you want to access Tin Shed and keep track of the schedule and all their specials, Tin Shed Savage on Twitter, Tin Shed Savage on Twitter, or Tin Shed MN on the internet to again, check out their menu specials. They have all kinds of stuff going on all the time. They have a bunch of big screen TVs. They have all the games and video games and pinball machines up against the wall. It's a great place to hang out, and we appreciate all of them supporting this podcast. From Mitch, do you think this new core of young players has a higher ceiling than the core we shipped out?
I don't know. To me, it's like that core of players that they shipped out still became quality NHLers. Now, did they ever become the stars or the guy that could, the players that could lead this team over the hump that Chuck Fletcher always envisioned? I think that one would be debatable. But it's way too early to say. I mean, Cunnin, Greenway, Eriksson Ek, I think none of them. Well, Cunnin has been a goal scorer at other levels, but the other guys really have not. And again, Fiala and Donato, we've got to see what they become. So, to me, it's just one of those things that you can debate one by one.
From Danny Sussman, this is the most important question of the podcast. What's your take on Marriott's super secret cobalt status? Is that in your future?
I hope so. From what I've read about the cobalt status is like almost got to be nominated for it. So if everybody here listening to this podcast wants to send is Bill Marriott the CEO of Marriott?
Sure.
Bill, I always see the pictures of the two Marriotts whenever you walk into a Marriott. If you all want to email them or send them emails, nominate me for the super secret cobalt status. I would absolutely love it.
That would be
awesome.
I have a friend who travels internationally frequently, and I was having a conversation with him. He was telling me that if you get to a certain point with Delta, they will, and like you're on a tight schedule, they will actually take you off the plane first and put you on like a cart and run you across the tarmac to the next flight. It's amazing the stuff that you can get to.
I don't know about the take off the plane first part, but if you get off a Delta flight, a lot of times you'll see a couple of agents there holding a sign on it, like, computerized sign or on an iPad with somebody's last name. And that is what happened. So you are taken down the Jetways bridge, the stairs, and put into a Mercedes or whatever, and you're taken to your next plane. That's the way it works. So I will never get to that point. It's just no way, because I don't fly internationally enough.
Right.
But I think I'm a 2 million miler. And that doesn't get you too much on Delta either. I have a friend that's he's an executive with I probably shouldn't say, but an executive with a hotel brand, and I believe he flies American everywhere because he's based in Chicago. So it would be American or United, and I think that he is treated that way. And then I've seen his rooms that he gets at Hyatt's. By the way, I just gave away the hotel brand. There you go. How about that?
What's one of my favorite things about you is you really can't keep secrets very well.
Yeah. I've seen the rooms he gets at the hotel brand that I will not mention. And they are unfreaking believable. And he's a funny guy, so I'm really good friends with his whole family. And so, all right, it's Hyatt. So every now remember when there was a time where you go into Marriott's and they got rid of desks and business travelers like me were going absolutely bet.
Yeah,
crazy. he'd be like in Hong Kong or freaking Sydney, Australia, or Dubai or whatever, and all of a sudden I get this text message with him of a video of him walking into his room, and it always ended with the picture of the desk.
That's awesome.
Like, here at Hyatt, we have actually desks if you want to use to write your stories. So I would have switched to Hyatt in an instant after I met him. But the problem, the thing with Marriott, and I love Hyatts. Trust me, the nicest hotels I've stayed in the world have been Hyatts. I remember as a kid, my grandparents used to always take my brother and me to Disney World, and we'd stay at, I think it was the Grand Hyatt down there, and it was just, I remember the pool to this day. But the thing with Marriott is that they got so many subsidiary brands that you can, every city you go on Marriott.com to freaking Des Moines, Iowa, and you're going to see within a vicinity 30 hotels that you can stay at. And it's, it's just from somebody that travels to all these cities like me, it's just an easier, and then you also get to that same point in life. Danny Sussman, I didn't expect that he was going to get such an expansive answer to this.
Nor did I.
But you get to that point in life too, where it's like, it's almost you're at the point of no return. Like at this point, it's like I can't change from Delta, right? At this point, it's like, all right, I've committed to Marriott, and it's sort of that way.
That was quite the answer.
Yeah.
From Gina, do you think?
Good question, Danny.
Yeah.
It's so refreshing to not have to talk about hockey for a second. And
Gina,
people know that I just hate talking about me, so I just figured I'd change it.
I think they're starting to catch on to you.
Yeah.
From Gina, do you think a new GM will give a chance to any of the players Fenton brought in, or do new GMs usually take Fenton's previous route of getting rid of the core of the previous GM assembled?
Well, Fenton took it to the extreme. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he almost got rid of all four. It's just crazy. I mean, that you consider that a year ago, you thought they'd get rid of a couple in Coyle, Niederreiter, Zucker, and Granlund, but he almost got rid of all four and did get rid of all three within 5 weeks. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, that was an absolute blow up. And I believe an ill-conceived one. It didn't have a plan, didn't have a vision. It's something that we've been sounding the alarms on this podcast for a year. So my guess is that any new GM, especially at this late juncture, the roster is the roster. And so it is incumbent on guys like Eriksson, Ek, Cunnin, and Greenway, and then also Fiala and Donato, the new guys, to prove themselves. And if they prove themselves, they're absolutely going to get a chance to be good players on this team.
Both Harold Johnson and Artie Jones basically asked the same question, which is, should there be any concern that Carolina didn't want to hold on to Waddell?
No, this is all about the owner and him feeling that his front office and employees are pawns. I mean, it's that, that anybody can do it. Like, trust me, that's the way it is. The reason why Don Waddell became the GM of that team is that everybody he interviewed for the job last year and offered it to didn't want to come work there for $200,000. I mean, that is not, GMs don't make $200,000. Paul Fenton was a first-time GM, and his contract was something like 8-9-1 and 1-1, and the 1-1 being a club option, or maybe it was 9-1, 1-1, and 1-1. It was something like that. In terms of 100,000 to $1 million. $200,000 is insane. And you see it right now. The Carolina Hurricanes, as exciting and good as they were on the ice last year, off the ice, they were in shambles. No assistant GMs leaving, no video coach, no goalie coach, scouts leaving and not being replaced. Now potentially their GM leaving. This is on the owner, and the fact that he doesn't want to spend money. He openly says it, and the fact that trust me, if Don Waddell leaves, the next GM, I guarantee you, the next GM of the Carolina Hurricanes he might not make himself it, but it might be kind of, one of their analytics guys or something. I'm not kidding you. This is not about, I'm not saying that Don Waddell is the end all be all and that he had this incredible career when he was managing Atlanta, although there was major ownership issues there too, and which I think led to a lot of the issues. And trust me, I'm really very well in tune with what went on with the Atlanta Thrashers for multiple reasons. And so I think that, I'm not saying he did a great job there, but I do think there was other pressures and powers that be that caused him to struggle there as a GM. But I can tell you that the reason why he's suddenly available here has nothing to do with him.
Interesting. From Wes Ryan, would you be against having cap relief for teams if they sign a player they drafted, for example, Toronto and Marner?
Yeah. Do they have that in basketball? Is it, or is it? I think it is, right?
Yeah.
Different.
Signing your own player, you get a break. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I would definitely be in tune to that. Right now, the only break you get in hockey is that you can sign him to an 8-year contract as opposed to a 7 max term. Call it the Suter Parisi rule, where after that happened in the lockout the following year, they put in max terms where if you sign another team's free agent, you can only sign him to 7 years, and if you sign your own guy, you can go up to a maximum of 8. But yeah, I do think there needs to be more breaks in the new CBA, whether it's restructuring contracts or they started to allow stuff like retaining money and retaining caps, which you couldn't do before the last lockout. But I would be in favor. I would want to look at it more and how it would work. That type of stuff might be above my pay grade and head, and my intelligence level. But I would be interested in at least learning how that would work.
Let's do a couple more Twitter questions to wrap up. Thanks to everybody for listening again. Thanks to all of our sponsors, as always. From Robert Duffy, was the GM situation a big reason Pavelski did not consider the Wild?
I think it was more of the team. His wanting to win. I think it's the same alarms that you're hearing from Zach Parise. I think the reason why Phil Kessel didn't come here is the perception out there right now is that this team right now is not one that's poised to win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 or 3 years. And when you're 35 like Joe Pavelski, your goal is to win a cup in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think that he looked at Dallas as obviously a better situation than here.
From Mark Benschoof, chances the RFAs signed by training camp?
I think that will happen. I think my guess is that a guy like Hunter Warner can be done in a second. It might even be done. And Louis Belpedo, I think, could be done in a second. But I think his agent has tabled negotiations right now until a new GM's in place. Because I think the thing with that one, even though it's a pretty cut and dry contract, I think that his agent is going to want to get a real set plan from the new GM of what he thinks of Belpedio, what his future is. The Belpedio contract's a really interesting one because right now Belpedio's future with the Minnesota Wild could be really dictated on what happens with Jared Spurgeon. If Louis Belpedio one day is maybe the replacement for Jared Spurgeon, that could affect the way that he plays this year. It could affect the way he comes in optimistically or pessimistically about the season, everything. So I think just they want to kind of get a feeling from the new GM on what he thinks about Belpedio and where the Spurgeon negotiations are going to go from there. And then, Fiala and Eriksson Ek, I've got to think we're on their way to being signed. Same agent there, Claude Lemieux, the former player, actually. I think they were negotiating a bridge deal with Lemieux. I don't know if that now has hit the brakes. A bridge deal on Fiala. I don't know if that's now hit the brakes and they'll wait, but I can't imagine that there's going to be contract disputes going into camp on Fiala and Eriksson Ek. Both those players know with a new GM that they've got to come in here and make their impression right away, and so I think they'll get them done.
From Ernest Harper, this is a hockey question. From Ernest Harper, looking at the projected top 6 forwards, who will be the F1 and the F2 in the corners and behind the net, contesting for the puck and creating play? Seems like they lack the speed and skill to play a transition game. If it's Parise, What happens to his scoring opportunities and durability?
Well, usually with Boudreau, really like the F1 and F2 is almost dictated by who comes into the zone first. They don't have a set system in that way. So where a lot of guys who would always have the third guy high being a center, or maybe in a lot of systems you might have the one of the F1s or F2s always being a center to dig down low. A lot of it is dictated on just who comes into the zone, on who basically is, say, the third guy high above the circles. Late last season, to get to this person's question, it just popped in my head, is the Wild became a real strict with the system, and I think it did bother a lot of players. In always making sure that they only had 2 guys in hard on the forecheck, and there was always had to be a safe guy, a third guy high, a center high above the hash marks in case that puck was turned over and they had to go back and defend. And the reason why that Bruce kind of made that tinker, I believe, is because this team couldn't score. They were getting shut out every night. So it got to the point where he felt they had to win 2-1 games, where usually Bruce Boudreau is somebody that wants to go in on the attack. To get back to the attacking question, and the transition question of this reader as well, is that, one reason why the Wild became, to me, weak on their forecheck last year and almost became a dump and chase team is I think that they lost a ton of speed and the last couple of years. And I think that Bruce Boudreau got to the point where he just felt like this team was going to always turn pucks over at the offensive blue line, and it would essentially then cause counterattacks the other way and odd man rushes, where essentially he's like, if you can't beat the defenseman, if they're standing up on you in the blue line, dump the puck early, hammer the defenseman, try to wear him down late in the game, and then you'll be able to create more space on those defensemen and come in with the puck and skate in and actually make plays. And so, at times I do think that the system became